They didn't just cut my name from the will, they erased me from the family. My name is Emily Harper. I remember sitting in that glass-walled office high above downtown Seattle, my hands sweating as I listened to the lawyer read out Dad's wishes. My brother Matthew sat grinning, already picturing himself driving Dad's Mercedes and moving into the penthouse overlooking the Sound. My mother Linda just smirked as the list of properties, stocks, and company shares all went to Matthew. Then silence. The lawyer glanced at me, almost apologetic, and handed me a battered, broken music box. I heard Matthew's low laugh, the kind that stings. Guess all those years in the choir didn't pay off after all, huh, Em? My mother didn't even bother to look at me. Some kids just never measure up, she whispered. But here's the thing, they thought I was finished. What no one in that room knew was that inside that broken music box was the one secret my father and everyone else had overlooked. The key to a legacy no amount of money or manipulation could take away from me. Maybe you've been in a room like that too, where people who are supposed to love you most make you feel invisible. If you know that feeling, you'll want to hear this. Because sometimes, what looks like rejection is the very beginning of something bigger than you ever imagined. So let me tell you how a discarded music box changed everything. I left the lawyer's office with the music box clutched tightly in my hand, like it might disappear if I let go. Honestly, I barely remembered how I walked down those cold stone steps, or how I melted into the gray Seattle afternoon. Cars rushed past, indifferent. It was as if the world hadn't noticed anything had happened. But to me, everything had. I felt invisible. Not just cut out of the will, but erased from the story of my own life. The drive back to Portland was a blur. Rain chased me down the highway, turning the world into smeared colors and watery memories. And with every mile, the same questions circled in my head. How could my own family erase me so completely? Was I really that worthless? When I finally got home, the rain had washed Portland clean. I placed the music box on my kitchen counter and stared at it. The dents, the scratches, the chipped paint. It looked like nothing. Just like how my mother always made me feel. But this wasn't just some old trinket. It belonged to Grandpa Henry, the only person in my life who ever did anything with meaning. I remembered the quiet afternoons at his house. Just the two of us, sitting at his worn piano, his fingers guiding mine, one note at a time. He'd always say, "Music is truth, Emily. It's where your heart goes when the world shuts you out." I missed him, more than I could ever say. Staring at that music box, I felt a strange mix of sadness and curiosity. What was I supposed to do with it? With this one last piece of a life I thought I had already lost? I tried to pry it open. Nothing. I almost gave up. But somewhere deep inside, maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was hope. I just couldn't let go. So I took a deep breath, reached for a tiny screwdriver, and began to open it up, having no idea that what I was about to find would change everything. The tiny screwdriver turned slowly in my hand. Bit by bit I worked at it, until finally a soft click broke the silence. The music box lid popped open. My heart thudded in my chest, harder than it should have. It wasn't just an old trinket anymore. It felt like something far deeper was waiting inside. I tilted the box toward the light. There, buried under layers of dust, was a small, neatly folded piece of paper. Old, fragile. I unfolded it carefully and froze. The handwriting, it was unmistakable. Grandpa Henry's. The very first line made my hand shake. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this letter, it means the world I meant for you has been hidden, perhaps even stolen from you." My vision blurred with tears, but I forced myself to keep reading. "I know they'll try to take everything from you, because they'll never understand the true worth of what you carry. But listen to me, your value isn't in the house or the car or the money in any bank. It's in your heart, where music still plays even when the world tries to silence you." I paused, took a deep breath, and for a moment I swore I could hear him whispering those words into my ear, gentle, steady, just like he always was. Then came the final lines, the ones that stopped my heart. "Beneath the hidden drawer of this music box, I've left you a key. It will lead you to what I protected for you, my true legacy, the one you deserve. Don't let anyone steal it from you again. I believe in you, Emily." My fingers trembled as I reached beneath the wooden base of the box, feeling for the hidden compartment. Just like he said, there it was. a small brass key. Quiet but strong, like it had been waiting for me all these years. In that moment, every wound, every doubt inside me began to fade. Something else took their place. Determination, clarity, strength. I didn't know what the key would open, but for the first time in years, I was ready to find the truth he left behind. And more than that, I was ready to find myself again. The next morning, soft sunlight slipped through the sheer curtains, casting a warm golden shimmer on the brass key. I hadn't slept a wink. My grandfather's words echoed endlessly in my mind, urging me to act, like the secret he spoke of was calling me. I picked up the key, its cool metal pressing gently against my fingertips. I couldn't help but wonder, where exactly would this mystery lead me? Without another thought, I grabbed my coat, stepped outside, and got into my little familiar car. The road to Grandpa's old house felt oddly comforting, even though I hadn't been back in years. But when I arrived, it was exactly as I remembered. Quiet, patient, as if it had been waiting for me all this time. The passage of time had left its mark, faded paint, weathered windows, and a silence that hummed with memory. I climbed the creaky steps slowly and unlocked the door with the key he had left for me. The moment I stepped inside, I had to pause. The air carried the scent of pine wood and his favorite tea, so familiar it brought tears to my eyes. Every step I took felt like walking into the past. In the center of the small living room, next to the old upright piano, sat a wooden table layered in dust. And right there on the table, placed with care, was a letter. I recognized his handwriting immediately. It read, "To Emily, if you found this place, it means you're ready to learn the truth." I carefully unfolded the letter, my fingers trembling as they traced the familiar strokes of Grandpa's handwriting. The first lines appeared clearly before me, and I felt as if he were standing right beside me, whispering each word gently into my ear. "Emily, my dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, it means you've finally found the key to the greatest secret of my life. A secret I kept hidden, knowing others in the family would never understand its true value." My heart began to race as I continued reading. In the final years of my life, I quietly established a charitable foundation called the Whitmore Music Trust. It's meant to be your vessel, a way for you to bring music to those who would otherwise never hear it, so that no one else will ever have to feel as lonely or forgotten as you once did. I've always believed you could take this mission far beyond anything I ever dreamed of. Emily, this is the real legacy I've left for you. I sat down on the old bench beside the dusty piano, my eyes brimming with tears. In that moment, all the pain, all the bitterness I'd carried for so long, it just melted away. For the first time, I realized I was never forgotten. Not for a second. Grandpa had always believed in me. He had waited for me to grow strong enough to carry this responsibility. And now I was ready. The last part of his letter broke what little restraint I had left. Tears streamed freely down my cheeks. "Never let the world out there define your worth, Emily. You are and have always been worthy of love, of respect. And I am so proud of you. Use music to heal the world just as it once healed your heart. I'll always be with you. Forever." I folded the letter gently, placed my hand over my heart, and felt something deep inside me shift. Something old had ended, and something new had just begun. Now I knew what I had to do. I would honor his wish. I would show the world that my value was never lost. This was the true beginning of my life. The days that followed were a whirlwind, busy but deeply inspiring. With the help of attorney Charles Bennett, I quickly finalized the legal paperwork and officially took over the Whitmore Music Trust. Everything moved so fast, I barely had time to realize that my entire life had changed. I transformed my grandfather's small house into the Trust's first headquarters, a warm, welcoming place where I began offering free music lessons to underprivileged children. Within just a few short weeks, parents and students began showing up, kids who had never even touched a real piano before. As I looked into their bright, eager eyes and saw their pure joy, a wave of indescribable emotions swept over me. Then one late afternoon, just as I wrapped up the last class of the day, my phone rang. My heart skipped a beat. The caller ID displayed a number I hadn't seen since the day of the will reading. My mother's. Her voice came through, cold and sharp, as if trying to erase every sliver of hope I had left. "Emily, what do you think you're doing? Stop creating more problems. You're not capable of managing something like this." For a moment, all the old pain came rushing back. But this time, I wasn't the fragile girl I used to be. I took a deep breath and responded, calm but unwavering. Mom, this isn't a game. And it's not something you, or anyone else, gets to define for me. I'm doing what's right, what Grandpa believed in, and I won't stop just because you don't believe in me. The call ended quickly. Silence filled the room once again. But this time that silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace, steady, grounding peace. For the first time I was certain I was exactly where I was meant to be. The following weeks felt like a dream. News of the Whitmore Music Trust spread quickly across Portland. More and more people began showing up at my grandfather's little house, now a familiar gathering place. They came carrying old instruments, worn but full of stories, offering them with kind hearts and open hands, eager to be part of the journey. My heart had never felt warmer. I knew this was exactly what Grandpa had always hoped for. One morning, as I was preparing for the first class of the day, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Matthew, my brother. His voice came through with that same familiar coldness laced with sarcasm. Emily, you really think you're doing something impressive, huh? You honestly believe a little charity like this will change anything? I paused for a moment, letting his words settle into the silence between us. Then I answered, softly but with a quiet force. Matthew, this isn't about being impressive. It's not about who wins or loses. It's about doing what's right, something you and the rest of our family never really understood. I won't stop no matter what you think. I hung up. And with that click, it felt like a weight I'd been carrying for years finally lifted from my chest. No one, not even Matthew, could make me question my worth ever again. I turned back to the classroom where children were already waiting, wide-eyed and eager to learn. In that moment, I knew I was exactly where I belonged. Just a few days later, a new email landed in my inbox, unexpected but full of promise. It was an invitation from the Seattle Arts Foundation, one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the city. They wanted to partner with the Whitmore Music Trust to help expand our reach and bring music to hundreds more children. My heart raced. A quiet, joyful pulse surged through me. Forgiving my mother, a deep moment of healing. It was late in the afternoon, just as I'd finished wrapping up the day's work, when a soft knock echoed from the front door. I walked over and opened it and froze. There she was. My mother? She stood quietly, her eyes cast down, avoiding mine. In her hands was a small box, carefully wrapped. A flood of emotions surged through me, because it had been so long since we had stood face to face like this. Emily, her voice trembled, stripped of its usual coldness. May I come in just for a moment? I gave a small nod and stepped aside. We both sat down at the little wooden table my grandfather had always loved. The room fell silent for a few long seconds. The only sound was my heartbeat pounding in my chest. My mother slowly pushed the box toward me, still not lifting her gaze. I found this among your grandfather's old things. He prepared it a long time ago, and I think it's meant for you. I carefully opened the box. Inside was a small, faded photograph, one of me as a little girl sitting beside Grandpa at the old piano, both of us smiling with joy. Tucked beneath it was a tiny folded note, written in my grandfather's familiar, tender handwriting. Family isn't always perfect. But music will always be the place where wounds begin to heal. Forgive, Emily. That is where your greatest strength lies. Each word landed like a soft echo deep in my soul. Tears welled up and streamed down my face, unstoppable. I looked up at my mother, and for the first time in years I saw tears streaming down her face too. Emily, she whispered, voice shaking. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me, even if it's too late. I searched her eyes. There was no pride in them now, only remorse, and something else, something real. In that moment, all the bitterness and pain began to loosen their grip. I reached out and gently took her hand. My voice came out soft, like the music Grandpa used to play. It's never too late to forgive, Mom. The moment my mother and I held each other's hands, time seemed to pause. The tiny room, once filled with silence and distance, suddenly felt warmer than it ever had. I realized sometimes life gives us wounds not to break us, but to lead us to the chance to heal. From that day on, my mother began visiting the music center often. At first, she sat quietly in the back corner, just listening, to the sound of the piano, to the bright laughter of the children. But over time, I noticed something begin to shift in her face. Her smile came more easily, and her eyes weren't so cold anymore. One evening, as I was locking up, I suddenly heard the sound of the piano coming from the little practice room. I stepped closer, heart skipping a beat, and there she was, sitting at Grandpa's old piano, her trembling hands brushing gently across the keys. She was playing it, his piece. The same melody he used to play for me whenever I was sad. As the final notes faded into the room, I walked in and sat beside her. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears and with regret. "Emily," she whispered. I never forgot these sounds. "I lost them, the same way I lost you. I'm so sorry. And I'm grateful, more than you know, that you gave me the chance to find myself again." I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in so many years, I felt like we truly found each other. I knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but this time, I wouldn't be walking it alone. I had Grandpa watching over me from somewhere beyond, and now I had my mother by my side. The next morning I woke up early. Soft golden light filtered through the hotel window, dancing on the walls like tiny brushstrokes of peace. I sat at the edge of the bed, breathing in a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Like a weight I didn't know I was carrying had finally been lifted from my soul. When I returned to the music center, I was stunned to see someone already waiting by the door. It was Matthew, my brother. He looked at me, but this time the arrogance in his eyes was gone. What replaced it was something rare, something real. "Emily," he said quietly, "I want to help. I know I can't take back the pain I caused you, but I want to spend the rest of my life helping you carry out Grandpa's dream." I stared at him, caught between surprise and emotion. And in that moment, my heart began to heal all over again, this time through the love of the brother I thought I had lost forever. I gave him a small smile and nodded. "Of course, Matt. I'm really glad you're here." Time moved forward softly but full of meaning. With my mother and brother beside me, the Whitmore Music Trust became more than just a free music school. It became home for dozens of families who had none. Day by day, the music grew louder. Laughter filled the rooms. And the message grew clearer, that love, when nurtured, has the power to outshine any pain the world could ever bring. One late afternoon, I was sitting by the window, quietly listening to a lesson being played in the next room, when I noticed a small boy standing outside the door. He was still hesitant, but in his eyes burned something fierce, a longing. I gently walked over and knelt beside him. "Hi there," I said softly. "Would you like to come in?" He looked up at me with wide, shimmering eyes and whispered, "Miss Emily, but I don't have a piano at home. But I really love music. Could I learn too?" I reached for his hand and smiled as I led him inside. "Of course, sweetheart. Here, music belongs to everyone. You're always welcome." As time passed, the Whitmore Music Trust continued to grow, becoming a sanctuary for countless young lives in Portland. Each day brought new faces, new stories, some filled with pain too deep to speak of, others carrying hopes as fragile and bright as the first light of dawn. Then, on an early spring morning, with cherry blossoms blooming outside our windows, we hosted our very first community concert. The tiny classroom that once echoed with quiet loneliness had transformed, now bursting with applause, music, and the pure laughter of joy. My mother sat in the front row, holding my hand, her eyes shining with pride. Matthew stood across the room, cheering the children on like a true older brother. As the final notes danced into the air, I stood to speak. My voice was soft, but steady. We've all known pain. We've all had moments where we felt we didn't belong. But music, love, they brought me back to myself. They helped me heal the deepest scars I once thought would never fade. And my wish for every child, every person who walks through these doors, is that you feel worthy. Worthy of joy, worthy of being heard, worthy of dreaming and rising again. The room erupted in applause, music soaring once more. And as I looked out at all those bright, radiant faces, I knew this journey, no matter how tear-filled it once was, had become a beautiful song. Grandpa Henry's legacy wasn't just a charitable foundation. It was a life of forgiveness, of courage, of love strong enough to pass on. As the concert came to an end, guests slowly filed out, smiles on their faces, hope glowing in every eye. I stayed behind with Mom and Matthew, helping clean up. And for the first time in what felt like forever, my heart was completely at peace. When the room was finally quiet, I sat down by myself amidst all the memories, closed my eyes, and let the echoes of piano music settle gently into my soul. And now, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough, if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever believed your worth was something others had the right to decide, please hear this. Every scar is a lesson. Every loss can become a turning point. Never let anyone, not even your family, define your worth. Only you get to decide who you are and where you're going. And if you, even once, have felt lost, know this. Each of us has the chance to begin again. So please give yourself that chance. Forgive. Believe in something beautiful. And find your own music, whether it's a passion, a memory, or just one small thing that helps you rise from the dark. Thank you for listening, for staying with me, and for walking this path all the way to the end. If my story touched your heart, please share this video with someone who needs it. Leave a comment with your own story. Who knows, maybe your words will become the light someone else is searching for. And if you'd like to hear more stories of healing, redemption, and rebirth, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next story, where we are no longer the ones who were lost, but the ones writing our next chapter. Wishing you a peaceful, warm night. My name is Emily Harper, and I've finally found my way home.